Hello, my friend. Welcome to the show. That is the Butterfly Effect podcast. I'm your host, Eliza, and I'm here with my little pet crow called Liam.
I don't know if I'm a fan of that, but hello, guys.
It's going to be the intro for the next 4 episodes, so strap in. So yeah, guys, again, before we do get into Chapter 7 analysis, I will once again promote our second channel, the Butterfly Effect Podcast bonus channel, where you can go and watch Liam's gameplay of the Quarry. So make sure you drop in and do just that. Right, Chapter 7, mate. Nice little flashback sequence, which when I first played, I really didn't expect. And to be honest, since I've finished playing it, I've seen that there's been quite mixed reviews about this. So before we get into the specifics, are you happy with this as like a flashback sequence? Do you feel like the pace of the game really dropped off here at all?
Yeah, so I'm happy with the sequence. I think I'm really delighted to see my favourite character come back. It's been a while since we've seen, the 3 main characters in this chapter, really. Travis, Max, Laura. We haven't seen them since the prologue. I do agree it might affect the pacing somewhat. I definitely think it drops off. There are times where it completely kills the pacing, especially when you're roaming around the police station as me, because it took me forever to find the clues as Laura. I think if you look at my gameplay, there's a lot of half-hour slots on the parts, but this one took me over an hour to complete because I just could not find certain clues. I really enjoyed it, but there are parts I would agree I would have done slightly differently. How about yourself?
Yeah, like, to be honest, overall, I'm glad that they did do it how they did it, with obviously the odd intercut back to them at the pool house, because if it was just them sat at the pool house and Laura was telling the story and we was watching her tell the story and she said how she got the eye patch and that, I think that would have been really boring. So the fact that we got to play it out, I liked it. From a pacing point of view, I don't know, it's a mixed bag, because on the one hand I liked it gave a bit of context and obviously helped to serve with the story, but like I say, there were points where it did sort of grind to a halt a little bit. But I won't say that I'm like a hater of this chapter at all. Like, I would say that it is still one of the better ones for me.
I think you could argue as well that I know it's a very cinematic game, and a lot of the people who aren't into these games will criticize them for it basically being a movie where you press a few buttons and choices along the way. The gameplay is definitely weaker on this front. It's very much like a storytelling, almost like you're watching a movie. It's very dialogue heavy. There aren't that many choices in it. There's one little section where you can roam around the building, but it's very just dialogue choice heavy. So it probably needed something slightly different inside there to just jazz it up slightly. But like you say, it's different. I enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace. It's just maybe too much so where you could argue it almost didn't fit in with the game. Although I am glad it was there, because it's just nice to have something different than the main cast we're seeing. And it's nice to do, I appreciate a bold decision, I'm going to say that. So it was nice that they took a risk. Like you say, way better than if Laura was just to tell the story in the pool house. So I completely agree on that front, mate.
Yeah, and I think as well you get to see more of Max, who I'd have probably argued maybe you could have played as this chapter. I wonder, quick side note, wonder how interesting it would have been if you were playing as Max and then you just had like an absolute blackout, and then you woke up and then you saw Laura with an eye missing. Like, to be fair, like, I did really like the whole cinematic sequence. I know we're jumping ahead here with like him transforming, but I think because we'd already seen it with Nick, it was slightly less impactful. But yeah, like maybe it could have been good to play as Max. But anyway, we'll rewind. We'll go back to the beginning. And of course, the whole chapter starts off with Max being dragged in and Laura's coming round, it gives you the option to call out. I know I did call out, but did you call out at all? Probably doesn't make a difference, but
I did. I wonder what happens if you don't, but nothing much came of it. So I wonder if this is a dud choice here, mate. I got completely blanked. So
yeah, it probably is. And of course, you then hear some very strange noises coming from the next door but one cage. It's obviously Max, either coming back from a werewolf to a human or vice versa. He's turning into a werewolf. But then shortly after that, we have an interrogation scene with Travis. So do you want to take it away on what you did in that particular bit?
Yeah, I just want to say actually before with the transformation, so you see Max get dragged in as human, so he clearly gets turned into a wolf at this moment, right? But one thing I must comment on is that like the moment he's dragged in the cell and pushed in there, we see the blood splatter, and I don't know if Travis is a lucky boy there, but he timed it fucking close. It's merely seconds. Where he turns into a wolf, and I don't know if Travis knows the exact time or if he removed a curtain which revealed the moonlight. I don't know how he managed that, but it was fucking close. Like Travis could have just straight up died there, and then that would have been interesting. But yeah. I mean, I'll get to the interrogation, mate. Yeah, so essentially, I mean, you can kind of either be compliant or be a bitch, and I was thinking, well, this guy's got the power here, he's captured me. I'm gonna be compliant. So, I'm going to answer exactly. I'm going to say my name. I'm going to just, be a goody two-shoes here. One thing that I will say with not only this sequence, but a few sequences going forward when Travis is playing the cop who's not saying much, he's just telling you to shut up. I did think it is a bit weird that he just expects them not to talk. It's like, these kids, are young, they've got their summer, they're probably terrified because you've kidnapped them. And he's just constantly there, like, nah, I'm in charge here. I'm asking the questions. I feel like if I was the kidnapper there, I'd have to give them like a sliver or a little something, so they'd keep their mouth shut. I think it's almost really unreasonable just to expect them not to talk whatsoever. So yeah, like really bizarre attitude from Travis. I think like the way he goes about this whole interrogation process and the way he kidnaps the kids, very bizarre. I'll elaborate more as we go. But I mean, how about your sort of interrogation? Did you kind of like approach Travis in the way where I'm going to be compliant, or did you sort of challenge him throughout?
Very compliant, because even from the prologue, I was very much in a mindset that I know that they're almost purposely trying to position him as a bit of a creepy cop, but I think he has very legitimate reasons as to why he's saying what he is saying. Obviously, no, it's not ideal, like of his methods by using the syringe in order to get you there, which obviously that you'd be forgiven for not complying for that sense. But I was wanting information. I was thinking the more antagonistic I am with him, it could work against me later on in the game. So yeah, I was very compliant.
Yeah, I think you have the option as well to lash out, but yeah, like I never took that. One thing as well with these sequences as well is that Laura notices the Hackett link, so she has the option to kind of just question about are you related to Chris or that. One thing I will say, and it's especially about like them digging up the fact that werewolves are around, the fact they're brothers. This is information we already knew. And I think one place this chapter does fall flat on is that we're one step ahead of Laura and Max. Yeah. So we've already solved a lot of the stuff. So we're having to kind of, wait for Laura and Max to catch up. And I don't know if you agree with me there, mate, but I just kind of think that's one downfall of the chapter, that, we're not solving it with them. We're waiting for them to catch up. And that can sometimes be a tedious process.
100%. 100%. In fact, I'd expand it beyond this chapter, because even in this podcast, mate, I know for the first few, or at the end of the prologue, for crying out loud, we were both sat here saying, I don't think Travis is that bad, I think Chris is the wolf. Even before the game, like this is going to be a separate video, but I suppose it's a criticism that too much was revealed, and the mystery of this game very easy to solve. Like, I reckon there could be people that didn't do half the digging that we did and still clocked on before Laura and Max, like that it was werewolves and that they were related and all this jazz. So yeah,
even with the hillbillies, we've been trusting the hillbillies from the beginning, right? And for like chapters and chapters, we're fighting them, we're hiding from them, and I'm just sat there thinking, like, why? You're deliberately failing quick time events to get blood in your face.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can elaborate that further in another video. But so are we all done with interrogation? Did you want to move on to the next bit?
Oh, so I guess this is the first time Max and Laura finally have the cup off their back and they can start talking. So yeah, there's just a few things like, more of Max's character comes out here, and I think it is what makes Max quite a nice character. I thought very much so he'd be prologue fodder, but you get like the classic lines such as "son of a binky bonk." I love the dynamic of Laura and Max, the way, Laura's quite studious and like kind of her head's screwed on, she's quite dedicated, while Max is a bit on the lazier side, and, he doesn't even know who Chris Hackett is. He didn't study the map. He doesn't even know, like, he's in North Kill as a town. And, there was some nice dialogue there, and it further made me ship them as a couple, to be honest. It's quite nice to see them. But then you get Travis that comes in and, it's his turn to interview Max there. But yeah, like, you have the option to calm Max down or kind of like sort of tell him, I'll get your hands off, like my boyfriend or whatever. And I'm still trying to be compliant, and Max is there looking at me like, what the hell, Laura? Like, what have you done to my girlfriend? And I'm just like, Max, like, shut the fuck up. I'm playing like nice here. Do you not see what I'm trying to do? I don't know if it was the same for you, mate.
It was. Yeah. So read between the lines, Max, for God's sake. It's not like we're in a position to command such authority and whatnot. We're prisoners. You got to play it a bit smart.
That's it. I'm also going to say as well, I don't know about you, mate, but I'm going to lump all of this into one little bit here. But this chapter was very glitchy for me. I don't know about you.
What glitches, just in case it refreshes something for me?
A lot of like the transition glitches were on about, a lot of repeating dialogue that you said. I'll put it on screen now.
I said literally the exact same thing. Are you out of your
goddamn mind?
So yeah, there was a lot of duplicating of dialogue, and it definitely kind of just affected it a little bit. Just it was a little unpolished, and I felt this chapter probably had maybe more glitches than the other ones, and I don't know if it was because there was a lot of jumping back and forth from like the pool house and the flashback scene, but it did sort of get it bothered me a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, that did happen for me as well, and I'm convinced I noticed it in other chapters going forward as well. So yeah, not the best really, because it does take you out of the experience, and it always did seem to be at the start of a new sequence, or where it cut from one place to another. So obviously some sort of error in the recording and editing or something.
That's it. But anyway, I mean, I guess this is the first time you can walk around, albeit just one cell with 3 things to look at. But you see this limerick on the wall, you see this loose brick, which can probably come into play later on. So when Max comes back, you realise that you've had the same interrogation, only that Travis asked Max how he was feeling in the morning and stuff. So there were a few things. But yeah, like, I guess this is the first time they really start to clock onto what's going on. And I will say it is nice, I mentioned it in a previous chapter, to see some smart horror characters where they're actually clocking on what's going on. Although I said, yeah, it's probably tedious that we're one step ahead of them, or maybe even 5 steps from, because we know what's going on. But they start talking about how the cops started acting weird at the animal, the fact there's only one cop around, even though they are in a police station, the Hackett connection, and then it leads on to Max realizing, I don't even have a scratch on me. When you see in the prologue that he was messed up, all to the point that when we had the prologue leaked to us, we actually thought a lot of us thought Max was dead at that point. So yeah, like obviously we've realized that Max is clearly a wolf and he's healed up. And then they actually consider it. I didn't think they would, because it's rare you see the characters in a horror film actually clock onto what's going on. But Max thinks, it's a full moon. Do you think there's a chance I've become a wolf? I don't know about you, mate. Did you find it refreshing to find them actually clock on and figure it out without having to see the evidence literally dead in front of them?
I did, yeah, and I suppose it is that it's sort of like it was necessary, wasn't it? Because like what you were saying about us being ahead of them. I mean, obviously, Supermassive might not have been thinking that would be the case, but nonetheless, it then just as a player, you then think, right, okay, finally, like we're up to speed. So I'm now with the characters, and I suppose you feel more connected to them, really, on a point of view basis, because if you're sat there with more knowledge and they don't have knowledge, then you don't have that connection. But if you're both in the same place knowledge wise, you can almost empathize with them a little bit more, like the various situations that they're in. So
yeah, I agree. Another thing to mention as well at this section is you can find the letter before in the prologue, and you can bring up Max not getting into college. So I'm really loving Laura in this section, because you see her brainstorming. She's clearly this very good, smart character who I found really refreshing, especially since Siobhan Williams was probably like, I don't know, maybe either the smallest actress or the one I knew the least about, is probably a fair way to word that. So, I had no idea she was going to get this kind of like main character treatment from this point onwards. But yeah, like I sort of made her empathetic with Max. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Yeah. What is it? The choice being is that obviously he didn't get into the university.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, obviously you told me this yesterday. The fact that it's Landis University, and that's the surname of the director that did American Werewolf in London. So nice nod there.
We thought there would be a link there. So yeah, no, honestly, pat on the back for that one, man. That was good digging from you.
Yeah. Because I mean, the last thing you want to do, the guy's just become a werewolf, just to start digging him out. Why didn't you tell me? All this sort of thing. So yeah, you've got to be.
Yeah, it's like Matt and Emily when she's literally hanging to death, and he's like, "Oh, why were you chatting to Mike earlier?" Yeah. It's one of those. Yeah. But it's nice to see it, and Max said sorry back. Laura apologized because they had their plans. There's frustration there, but I really ship them as a couple because they're quite different in terms of their motivation. There's this nice section here, and we learn more about Laura, about how she wants to become a vet, and it's really nice to see. It gives a lot of depth to Laura. And yeah, like I say, each scene with them, although the dialogue could drag at parts, I felt it really cemented them as a strong couple. And I'll get into it on a later chapter, but it made me disagree with certain of the later directions where they almost peel Laura and Max away and then throw Ryan out of one sort of ship into this potential one. And I didn't really understand the whole Laura and Ryan section later on in the game, but I'll dig into that way later. For now, I guess we move on to the bit where I really didn't get this bit, mate, because you've got Ryan who's questioning Laura. And I get Laura questioning Max at the start because it's like, yeah, it's a bit dodgy. She's been locked up in a cell. She's quite, blind to seeing a lot of the stuff that's been going on. But Ryan's literally lived the night. He's seen, like, Nick change into a wolf for starters, throwing Abby across, like, the poolhouse. He's seen Bobby shoot his finger up. He's seen a lot of stuff go on. Jacob covered in blood, for example. And he's questioning, it can't be wolves. Are you going to throw, like, zombies or time-hopping, like, Draculas? Yeah. And I'm just like, why are you questioning this, Ryan? You've literally seen the wolf in front of you. I don't know if you thought that, but I just thought it was really odd.
Oh, that's so true. I feel like I've done Bobby a disservice now in my prediction when I said that he was going to be lacking in intelligence. Fuck me, that award goes to Ryan. after pointing
Yeah.
it out. It again, it just sort of just shows like how completely naive, or how they choose to not see what's in front of them, see the wood for the trees, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Because the number of times, oh, it's bears, oh, I didn't see that can't be any problem. It's like, come on.
That's it. I enjoyed like Dylan in this line backing Laura up, like, oh, we need to hear her out here. And then when they talk about the amputation, Laura says it was the right thing to do. And then Dylan's like, see, she had a whole poem about it. It must be true. I was like, okay. A lot of Dylan's jokes land better for me in the second half of the game, I find. Like, I am, like at this point, I was starting to see Dylan's jokes a lot better than, like, for me, what, in my opinion, was quite a cringy line about, like a podcast on how to smell like a butt. I just was like, that just wasn't funny to me. While this was, I was like, I'm liking Dylan's Saki lines when he's in dialogue like this. I also really appreciate Laura's sassiness here, just telling things like, oh, if you interrupt me one more time, I will just like... And there's literally the option to tell Ryan to shut the fuck up. I never did it, but I really want to see what happens when you do. So I'll be doing that in a future playthrough for sure. Yeah, so I guess we go for a month pan of just how Laura and Max have been prisoners for a month at this point. And clearly what Travis is trying to do is wait for the month to pass, because he doesn't think they're going to believe them. So he wants Laura and Max to see for themselves what's happened. So we'll see like a Laura meltdown where she's like, nah, I need to escape. We need to play nice. Which for some reason involves Max using the pet name T-Money to Travis. Which, if you look at Travis, I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to reply well to that. So a bit of a weird decision by Max there. But yeah, I guess for me in this section, mate, I almost played too nice. Admittedly, because the options were 50-50, where one was like, oh, carry on being nice, or literally break at him. So I was like, well, I'm going to carry on being nice. So much so to the point where Travis didn't buy it and was like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. And then he I lost my trust with him, but I don't really know how I would get around that. One part I kind of didn't really get or agree with was when Laura breaks, when she's like, oh, he's caught on, I'm just going to yell it. We know that Max is a werewolf. Travis kind of backtracks, turns around and says, you don't know the half of it. Now, I don't know about you, mate, but I'm thinking at this point that Travis has locked you up, right? In order to because he doesn't think you're going to believe the whole story. If he was to sit down and say, oh, well, basically my brother's a werewolf that attacked Max is going to turn into a wolf every moon. I get that. Like, a lot of people aren't going to believe that. But the moment they put two and two together and they work it out themselves, you can probably turn around at that point as Travis and think, oh, so you understand. Okay, let me explain the other bits that you don't understand, like, the lineage and all that kind of thing. But now Travis just shoots her down. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, she literally, you don't want to imprison these people. It's at this point where you can actually communicate and resolve it together and work as a team. You're literally locking them up because you're trying to protect them. Well, now they have the knowledge that they probably wouldn't have believed in the first place. Now you can actually move forward. And I just thought it was quite dumb here that Travis would shoot down the wolf thing. Like, oh, you don't know the half of it. Don't know if you thought the same, mate, but that's just what I took away from it.
I mean, I think there's perhaps a reason that I think that at this point he's still got some sort of ties to his family, because I know that there's a future revelation that Laura works out that obviously Chris is his brother, Chris is the wolf. That I'm guessing that when he says that you don't know the half of it, what he's saying is that he's in this awkward grey area where he can't really help them, because if he does, his brother will die as a result. So he's probably... It's funny that the fact that they're in a prison, because I suppose he's in a prison himself, really, because he can't really move that far. The only thing he can do to try and save everyone is find Silas. So I suppose that's how I interpreted it, that he's between a rock and a hard place.
Because obviously, we'll come to learn that they're looking for different, sort of wolves, but I guess we'll dig more into that later. But I guess I do understand that. I just thought it was weird of Travis at this point just to, not consider opening up a bit more, since Laura did kind of, throughout a month work this out. I guess this is the point though where it does become a full moon. Travis has to go out on the hunt, but first he'll have Laura witness what happens to Max. And this was a great scene. I love this bit where Laura has to, look at Max, see what he has to go through, witness it for himself, because Travis, probably thinks this is the best way for her to believe me. Bit weird how she was tied a little too close to the cell, because when Max does transform, completely gouges her eye out. But then it also frees her, and in turn you get a Rome scene afterwards. What I will say as well, I really like the scene. It's complemented with this really nice music as she walks to the mirror, removes her hand from her eye, and sees that Laura's eye is completely fucked up. She's got one eye at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Were you a fan of this scene, mate?
Big fan. And obviously, even in the build up to it, I was thinking, well, this is how she's gonna lose her eye. And it makes me wonder, because I know is it a little bit later on that he gives video footage of to Max of him turning. I was thinking, couldn't he have just given that to Laura and us in the cell as well? She's now lost her eye as a result. Very glad you mentioned the music, because I come back to this. I know it's not the end of the chapter, but you could almost forgive if the end of the chapter was there, where she's looking in the mirror. You've got this song, is it called Monster? Something like that. And it just feels like it's the end song before the credits roll. I think the music is one of the big pluses in this game for me.
Nah, it is very nice. I also skipped ahead actually, and I forgot there's this section. There's just a little choice where when Travis straps you to see Max turn into a wolf, he gets a little call in on his walkie-talkie or whatever, and you can actually choose to call out for help. Did you do that, mate?
I did, but then I immediately regretted it afterwards, because I was that's obviously Chris. I'd see it.
Yeah.
I knew all this. This is sometimes in the heat of the moment, you do something and you're like, oh fuck, why the hell did I do that? But yeah, so I did call out, and then immediately thought he's definitely talking to Chris. But
yeah, does that damage your trust with him? Does anything come out of dialogue at the bottom there? Because obviously I didn't call out, because I was probably, I'm still trying to get Travis to trust me. I think we can still work something out here. So yeah, does anything happen relationship wise there?
I don't think it makes a difference, mate. Because if I vaguely remember watching your playthrough, even not calling out, Chris still comes later on and's like, I know you've got them counsellors there. So I don't think it makes a difference.
Yeah. Because one thing that I do prefer Until Dawn on is the front that you have the character relationships in the pause menu. Now, obviously that's something that's completely gone from the Quarry. Now, I understand we can't have a carbon copy of Until Dawn, so it's not the worst thing that these relationship bars aren't here. In certain areas, it's it would have been nice to have seen them, though. And I think Laura and Travis is certainly one of them. Although they're not, Travis isn't a counsellor, say, it just would have been nice to have seen this, because the game can play out differently based on how Laura and Travis work together throughout this sequence. So yeah, it just would have been sort of nice maybe just to sort of see the difference here, because they do get different endings based off of, the decisions you make between each other here.
Yeah.
I guess we get a really interesting section afterwards, because Max, in hitting Laura's eye and gouging it out, or just scratching it or whatever, gives you this whole Rome scene since you break free. Quite refreshing, right, to see us get out of cell for once, right? I mean, did you enjoy this section?
Yeah, I was thinking perfect. This is going to be a clue finding section, so I was all for it and ready.
Yeah, of course. So obviously there's this the chariot tower, the only one I found in this chapter. I don't know if it was the only one. There are a few things such as the hiker poster. One thing I will say is that for such a big room and for such a section I spent a large amount of time in, I maybe would have liked to have found more clues, because I think the only thing you really get from it is trying to get into Chris Hackett's computer. And I guess I would have wanted like a load of juicy clues and things I didn't know about. I spent ages trying to get this puzzle together because for the life of me I could not find. I found birth year 1965 in one of the top rooms upstairs. I found the drugs, which I decided to keep in my pocket. Did you do that?
Did, yeah.
Okay. And then it's just July, the whichever date it was, is this calendar hidden at the back. It took me forever to find that. I actually went down to the computer thinking 1965 would be the password, but then it wasn't. Laura's like, oh no, I need the month as well. I was like, oh, fuck's sake. So I had to go all the way back around, and it spent me I spent so long trying to find it, and I eventually did, and I was so glad there was no timer where Travis comes back. And I guess I would have liked to have seen like a load of clues in, maybe like galleries, evidence about things about wolves I didn't quite know yet, a bit like when you open the Stranger's Diary in Until Dawn. But all you really get is just sort of emails back and forth between Chris and Travis about this podcast, right?
Right. I mean, do you want me to read out the clues and evidence that I found in this bit? And,
yeah, of course.
And then, so I found, obviously it was the hikers, but I don't think that was an official clue, like the posters. You know about the BYB podcast on the computer? Yeah. We've done about the scrawled limerick that was on the wall. There was the charred sheriff's badge. Did you find that?
I did, yeah. Actually, I did, yeah.
And then there's the cease and desist letter where basically Travis is trying to get the podcast to stop investigating around Hackett's Quarry because obviously they're getting a little bit too close for comfort given everything that's going on there. So that's everything I found. I found the syringe as well and pocketed that. Yeah, I do get what you mean with the whole going back and forth because I think I was fortunate though. I found the calendar first before I found the other thing.
Yeah.
For like his birthday, so I could then go. But I did actually go into that computer room first because I just looked at it as do all the downstairs rooms, then do all the upstairs rooms. So there was a little bit of back and forth, but.
Yeah, but I guess it's just one of those where I'm literally on the cop's computer. I think there should be like a really meaty like clue in here, but it's just stuff I kind of like. I guess we already knew a little bit, like that. Yeah, sure, there's the podcast, but it's just like, oh yeah, these guys are onto something. We need to shut this down. But I'm kind of like, well, we already know this stuff. We've seen wolves. Like, I guess like maybe this would have been a nice moment to have broken out like the whole family tree, a bit more about that. Or just something about, information about wolves that we didn't know prior. Maybe one that rewards people for getting onto the computer, because you can actually skip this whole scene and just go back to bed. But yeah, like, I don't know, maybe I just feel a bit cheated that I think maybe we should have found something a bit stronger. But yeah, I guess afterwards you go back to bed, don't you? Do you want to go, should we go to the next bit where you talk to Travis again?
Before we do, now I didn't do this, and I don't think you did this in your gameplay either, if my memory serves me well. But did you know that the syringe that you picked up, you can hide it in the wall?
Oh, right.
So that's the purpose of it. So when Travis in the next scene comes in and inspects, he finds the syringe, and then I think it comes up saying Travis doesn't trust you or something like that. But you can actually keep the syringe behind that brick in the wall and then use it later on.
Yeah, actually, no, I did think about that because later on in the morning, Travis frisks you and finds it. So you were supposed to discard it. And it makes sense because we know the kind of person Travis is. He is the kind of person who realizes you've just gone around his room. Yeah, he's going to frisk you. But yeah, very good scene. One I'm a little gutted to have missed, but hey, we can't win them all, right? It's one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess in the morning, this is the section we kind of fast forwarded a little bit to earlier, where Max is looking at footage of what happens to him, and while he's doing that, you have a little heart-to-heart with Travis, and I guess at this point he realizes you haven't run, and you are in the cell and stuff, and he's coughed you, but he is a lot more compliant with you back. He's talking to you about the whole vet stuff, and you know, he opens up a little bit about how he's like not in a good place either because he has to look after his family. A little bit unreasonable at this point where he's like, oh, well, you're a vet, you're going to help me. It's like, but she's literally a student. She's a kid. You can't just pin this responsibility on Laura for helping you out. It's like, she's not even gone to university yet. And you're like, well, yeah, you're studying veterinary stuff, right? You can help with these wolves. It's like, I don't think it kind of works like that. I don't think that's in the textbooks at university either, mate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's the section next, isn't there, where Chris comes along to talk to Travis later that night. Yeah, interesting. I guess it's stuff we already know about, you know, them being related, stuff we've gone over a million times. I guess Chris is a little bit there like, oh, what are you doing? Like, why are they locked up here? There's a bit of back and forth kind of growling. Yeah, anything to add on that, mate?
No, but obviously apart from what, you know, everything you've just said, but what I will say, what my mind was thinking at this point when I was playing the game, because you know I've said already that in terms of the playable characters, Abby's been my favourite, right?
Yeah.
But, and I suppose this is like a little bit of a spoiler before we do our Quarry Oscars, my favourite character in the game is Travis, and I think that it is partly due to a lot of chapter 7. You see like it's the subtleties with Travis, like in terms of the pitch of his voice when he's calm and measured and talking. He raises his voice at times. There's little facial expressions that give you like little social cues, like when he raises his eyebrows at surprise, and it's just like these tiny little things that I was seeing in Ted Raimi's performance and in the voice. Plus as well, obviously, his whole character arc. He's got sort of obligations to his family, but he's put in a difficult position because there's these two kids that are completely innocent that he has to lock up and take bits of their life away, really. And the fact that he's not a real sheriff either. I think all of these things were coming together at that point, and I'd still to this day I'd still say that Travis is the best character for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm pretty happy as well because I'm pretty sure for our Oscar things I nominated him to be the best actor, and you know, like, it's obviously subjective still, but there's definitely a claim for it. His acting, like you say, is incredible. It's the subtleties, the fact he can play creepy cop and then be this concerned adult who's talking to you heart to heart. Like, yeah, great range from Ted Raimi. So I doubt he is, but if you follow the Butterfly Effect podcast, good job, mate. There's actually the section as well here where Chris is talking to Travis, where like you drop a mug, I think, and you can choose to catch it. Now, I thought I would because I'm still like Team Travis here. I need to comply with the guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens if you would have dropped it if Chris intervenes here. But yeah, did you catch the mug, mate?
I did. So no, I don't know what happens either. I can only imagine that the conversation gets cut short, you know, and maybe they go somewhere else, or Travis comes in to check on you or something. I don't know, but
yeah. Because I like, obviously best case scenario it's like Chris comes in and sees you and then the game changes completely, but I doubt it would be anything that broad. But still, yeah, like obviously comment guys if you know, telling us what happens, because I probably won't do another playthrough for a while, so that would be really intriguing to find out. But then I guess Laura hashes this out with Max, and they put two and two together more. They know that Chris is a werewolf, and they kind of discover about the lineage. And then they finally have their mission. Laura works out that she has to kill Chris. Now, this is strongly going to be what Laura's character arc is for the rest of the game. She has to kill Chris, and she's so kind of laser set on doing this. So they have to come up with a plan, which is what they do the next day. So are you happy to go to the next section where you've got to play dead?
Of course, mate. Far away.
So, I mean, I'll start. I guess in my section, you know, you play dead, and then Travis checks on you. And while he is, you know, you grab the gun. I passed a quick time event, so I still kept the gun. I took his keys. I locked Travis in. I think you can actually shoot Travis here. I never had the option to do that. If I was presented with it, I wouldn't have done it anyway. And as I left with Max, I had the option to apologize to Travis, and I decided to take it. I was like, I kind of want to be on his team here. I think he's still a good ally to have. So I'm going to say sorry if that's any consolation, even though, yeah, I kind of disagreed with his methods. I don't know how your section played out here, mate.
Exactly the same. I mean, I wouldn't have shot him either, but I must admit that at this point, I did have like an achievement in my head. That one where I think it's like Travis and Laura agreed to work with one another. So I was like, I'm still going to be nice to him because he could come out later on, and if I don't act nice now, which I think actually, if you do shoot Travis, he doesn't hold back. Like, he will kill Laura. Like, he won't hesitate later on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wonder how you have the option to shoot him. Like, do you have to have a really hostile relationship with him to give Laura the consideration? And yeah, obviously I had the premonition before where I could see Laura stabbing Travis in the neck, and I guess this is where the syringe thing would come into play, wouldn't it, with the vial or whatever it was?
That's it. I think so anyway.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess you leave with Max, right? You go around the station, you find the silver bullets, so you equip yourselves. And yeah, like, I guess it goes back to the pool house where they're storytelling. And this is the moment where Laura reveals that she left Max at the island. So, you know, unless you haven't clocked it out before, this is where really you understand that Max was the wolf at the island that attacked Emma. This is what the campfire was. It was Laura, and they set up base on the island. And, you know, I guess there's this whole thing that you kind of figure out that every full moon Travis goes out to hunt Silas. And Laura, until recently, I guess, has been going out every month to find Chris. It makes you think, though, if this has been a 6-year ordeal with Travis, and he's not found Silas once, even though he gets like one night a month to do it, I guess. Travis is a bit shit, surely, at like finding this wolf. He's been trying for 6 years. That's like, what, 12 times 6 attempts at, you know, doing this?
It's true, and I've just obviously, like, I haven't been doing like a proper second playthrough, but I've been going back to check other endings and that. And the fact that later on in the game, you know, when him, Laura, and Ryan can go to Silas, the fact that he then goes, yes, and I know exactly where to go. I'm thinking, dear mate, because you've been spent the past 6 years trying to look for this wolf, and now it's suddenly convenient that you now know where to go to find him. So,
it's a bit fishy. It's like the moment there's cameras on him and a pretty girl, he's like, oh, I suddenly know how to kill a wolf. I don't, come on, follow me, guys. Nah, you're very right. That is such a good point. Like, why is he only just gone there at that one moment? I mean, I guess he does put 2 and 2 together that the Hag of Hackett's Quarry is involved and all that. So yeah, like, I am kind of, you know, shooting it a little harshly here, but you are right. So yeah, I guess it goes back to the pool house, and then Laura kind of talks, you know, about a nearer past flashback of how she went back on the island after Emma interfered with the treehouse, and I guess Max and Laura have a scuffle with Max in wolf form, and it's at this point that we find out that Laura's been bitten on the arm. Now, I guess the eye thing wouldn't have infected her, but obviously this arm thing has, because it is a bite. Now, I don't know about you, but this reminded me very much of, like, Lee Everett in the Walking Dead game in episode 4, mate.
Yeah, showing the bite, hiding the bite. Yeah, I showed it, personally.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that was an option, but yeah, I showed it myself as well. I thought, better be honest. I had a mix of emotions here, because I was very mumuch like, oh yeah, my favourite character's gone back, and then she's got a bite. I'm like, my favourite character's instantly going to die. And I felt like maybe this was... I didn't, at this point, clock on she was going to be like a main character, so I thought, oh, Laura's going to just be that girl from the prologue that comes in, and she's on borrowed time, so she's probably going to die either way, but she's going to like serve a purpose to help the group, a little bit kind of like the Stranger did in Until Dawn, because this almost does feel like as if the Stranger was a part of the prologue. You know, he's come into like the Until Dawn group, but in this case he becomes almost like the main character, and it was quite an interesting angle to go at. But yeah, very interesting that Laura's been bitten. And don't get me wrong, I love what happens going forward. I love half wolfling Laura. It's like, but I'll elaborate on that later. But yeah, any points to mention about Laura and the wolf stuff before we move into the Hackett house in the basement there, mate?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So we go to probably the main character of the game, Constance, mate.
Yeah, fucking hell. That lot.
It's funny, as we were playing, I was speaking to Anya throughout every sort of chapter stop. And at this point, she got ahead of me. And I just was like, Anya, where the fuck is Constance? Like, this is a character we've been like, we got leaks about all the characters. We had these character trailers. We knew a little bit about Jedediah, Bobby, Chris, all that. And then there's just this Constance in the, like, even we had a few Eliza teasers, but there's this Constance character who we knew nothing about. And she's just not appeared in the game. I'm like, is it like a glitch? Like what is her purpose? And then she just comes in like at the end here, I guess to like laugh at some wolf in a cell. And don't get me wrong, it's really chilling and it's great acting by Lin Shaye, and I did enjoy this section. I will say though that it was a little weird that I feel like with these hillbillies, they're almost trying to protect the teens, right? They're going around trying to put blood on their face. They're probably trying to find Silas to help their family out. I was sort of thinking, like, I get Constance is probably not a fighter. She's like holding fort at the Hackett house. But I was thinking, like, why is she going down there antagonizing the wolf? Like, this family kind of have good intentions, and she's there, like, laughing at it in the cage, sort of saying, oh, you dumb mutt kind of thing. And I was just like, I don't know, what is this girl's game? And it almost kind of goes against what the Hacketts are actually trying to do. I get, like, there is such a thing as individuality, and maybe that's just Constance's personality. She hates wolves, and, you know, she might go down there to kind of laugh at the wolf every now and then. But I don't know, I thought that was a bizarre thing, only in hindsight, of course. But, you know, when I look back at my playthrough, I did think that. Yeah, any comments on the Constance section, mate?
I really liked the whole lighting in that room, you know, that blood red. Which obviously sort of goes nicely with the sort of the themes of this game, and how you've almost got as like a POV as the werewolf, the way you see her face come in and look at the camera and make it seem really chilling. So it was nice, and I've got to admit though, when I was first playing, because obviously this is chapter 7, I was thinking, God blimey, like, at last she's been introduced to the game, and it just made me think she's almost going to be handled in the same vein as David Arquette, you know, like she's going to be in it briefly, say the least.
Yeah. And there's something I will elaborate more on, of like the underutilization of certain characters perhaps. But yeah, Constance is definitely someone where really intriguing. But yeah, no, I do agree with you about the lighting, mate. I really like the whole look of this room, and then how the camera pans and there's like barrels everywhere, and you're thinking, you know, at this point, kind of like, where are we? Because you don't exactly know where you are at this point, and it is kind of just throws more questions in your brain as you're getting towards the end of the game here. But then, like, obviously, in the same place, we have Jacob coming in, and he's getting dragged by Bobby into one of the electric cells, and you find out that you're kind of in a cell sort of next to the wall. Were there any sort of things, you know, kind of that were darting through your brain at this point, mate?
Definitely, and they did play out in my gameplay, because as soon as I saw him like get put, it wasn't next door to the wolf's cage, was it? As soon as I was thinking, if he doesn't get out, there's going to be somehow a moment when all the doors open, like the power's going to go, or, you know, that someone's just going to come in and open them and whatnot. And, well, I mean, it did pretty much play out that way in my gameplay. But so yeah, almost already theory building as to how Jacob could potentially die.
Of course. Yeah. Obviously, we just saw Constance in this exact room, and now we're seeing Bobby in. So it definitely confirms to me at this point that like Constance is in line with Bobby, who's obviously in line with Jedediah. So you kind of gather at this point that all the people that aren't counselors are pretty much in league with each other. There's no sort of like other divisions. It's all kind of one group. But yeah, really intriguing to see Jacob here. You kind of have the choice. Probably it doesn't make that much difference. I decided to go pleading again because I'm like, yeah, I still trust these hillbillies. They're being a bit extreme by dragging me, putting me in an electric fence next to a wolf here. Bit weird. But, you know, I'm not going to antagonize them in any way while they're actually probably trying to save me for the night by putting me in a safe cell. But yeah, I guess, as always, mate, we end with Eliza. I mean, I guess you look at Chariot and it just sort of shows a little section of Dylan carefully opening a car door, and we'll get more into that, you know, in a later chapter about what that involves. But yeah, really interesting section. We've covered all the points I've got written down. You know, I had a few bullet points about pacing. Happy to see these 3 characters back. I was over the moon to see my favourite character, Laura, back. But like we say, you know, although I appreciate the difference of this chapter and how it's changes it from what we've regularly seen, you know, with the counselors around the lodge and stuff running away from wolves, it was nice to have a flashback sequence. However, I do agree there were sections that were a little tedious and it was very dialogue heavy, and it would have been nice to have a bit more gameplay injection. I know these are story driven games, but it did feel for very long portions like I literally was stuck in a cell, which is a risky maneuver because if you're going to be stuck in a cell, you run the risk of this section being tedious, and in sections I did find it that way. But yeah, mate, I didn't know if you had any overall conclusions to this chapter. I mean, you know, you thought it was nice that we had something a little bit different as well, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I suppose, obviously, time will tell on that front when it comes to second playthroughs. If, obviously, you're listening and you've done a second, third, fourth playthrough of this game and you naturally have to go through Chapter 7 again or anything like that, you know, has your opinion changed since your first playthrough? Or, you know, are you still all in for this chapter? Because me being me, I know that I'll like it now. To go through it again, I don't know, I reckon I might sort of start, well, I suppose you can't really compare it to, you know, the walking scenes of Until Dawn, because at least you're walking and stuff, but
I was gonna say, is it gonna be like the sanatorium scenes in Until Dawn?
Yeah.
And I have seen a few people comment that they wish it just got chopped up a little more, like maybe you put a little bit in chapter 6, a little bit in chapter 8. I guess it would be difficult in hindsight because, you know, Laura's literally come in the poorhouse and they're doing it from a storytelling perspective, which is why you only play as Laura for like the whole scene basically. But yeah, like, oh, other than Jacob in that little last second there. However, yeah, like, it definitely would have been. I'm trying to think of ways where you could have executed this better. So yeah, obviously in the comments, let us know if you have any ideas how you would have changed this section up, because I myself don't know how I would have done it, but I believe there possibly is a better way out there to execute the scene, certainly in terms of pacing anyway. But yeah, mate, any other comments, or are we happy to end things?
no, man, happy to wrap it up there.
Okay, well, thank you very much as always, guys, for joining us. Like Jack said at the start, my gameplay is on the bonus channel. Links are all in the description. And I guess we'll see you at the next one.
See you then.